Hi! Sorry if you've been watching for a bit. Hi, yes, it is a beautiful night to talk Hills. It's a beautiful night to talk about everything. Sorry, let me finish the setup. Coach Sarah, I sincerely apologize that I was not able to get back to you a little bit sooner to practice with the streaming software. Today has been a little bit of a disaster, to say the least. We just finished the Easter bunny photos, which went almost as well as photographs with Santa Claus could be expected to, which means it was awful. Awful. Oh my gosh, the kids were all scared of the bunnies. I'm like, and y'all didn't even watch the movie Us like I did, where, I mean, I'm really scared of bunnies now. That was a terrifying experience. But, hello, if you're in Boston, yay you! Because you get to live there all the time. For everyone that's just visiting Boston right now, yay you! Still enjoy that experience. A couple things I wanted to touch on tonight. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Boston Marathon, since I have a lot of runners there that are freaking out right now. And they're not freaking out a little bit, they're freaking out like a lot. And then I'm going to get into a couple of questions from the nice list. And then I'm going to bring Coach Sarah, hopefully, on camera with me, and we're going to start answering some of the questions from the Maintain beta test group from the Fitness Protection Program. A couple of you managed to find the secret link to get into Maintain early, and you know what? I can't figure out how to do refund, so I'm going to honor it. I'll email you directly, and I can't prorate the month. I can't adjust anything. Your subscription is just going to start at the middle of the month. So at the very, very end of this, if those people are on the stream, I will talk about what to do and how to go ahead and jump in with a couple weeks left. And we're gonna make it work. It's going to be fine. Because you know what? Not everyone's going to remember or think to join on the first of the month. Anyway, this was always going to happen. We're just going to do a dry run with you guys too. So, yay, Boston! I'm going to very quickly switch to a different screen and pull up my Boston course strategy. So sorry if I'm making any funny faces. I literally can't see what I look like. I just added it as a comment. If you click on that link, that is in the comments in my Facebook page, and hold on, I'll get it on my Twitch too. There it is. Link is now up on both the Twitch chat and the Facebook live chat. If you hop in there, click on the link, you can see my course preview for the Boston Marathon. This is known as, generally speaking, as a positive split course, and people kind of take that phrase and run with it down a rabbit hole of anxiety from which there is no return. You're there. The most important thing I think I could emphasize to anyone racing Boston tomorrow is that you came for the jacket. And I say that not to minimize the accomplishment of what you've done, but rather if you wake up and there is hail, there is thunder and lightning, there is a flood and an ark with animals on it, stay in bed. It's okay. You don't have to do this. Qualifying for it and getting there, that is it. Race day is sort of it is what it is, right? You can't, we make this out to be such an all-encompassing thing and such a big deal that we forget that Boston, though it is a super important marathon, it's an iconic marathon, but just like every other marathon you'll ever do, there is no guarantee that that day is going to be good, or that things are going to work, or that's going to go your way. A whole lot has to fall into place for a marathon to be decent, and as opposed to bad, and a lot more has to fall into place for it to be like really good. In the past, I've referred to those as a DJ day, because the two really great races that my client DJ has had, we didn't see them coming. Not specifically on that day. It's like, this is what you're capable of. This is what you're going to be facing on race day. I don't know that you're going to, that this is going to be a showcase for all that you have and all that you are, and be proof that everything I say you've got is actually in there, because the odds aren't necessarily good. Your stomach doesn't feel good, or we're in a city with a whole lot of pollen and you have asthma, or you brought the baby with you and the baby's up on it. There's so many things that could go wrong. It's hard to say, like, I think this is your day and this is going to happen. And right now, if you're looking at the weather, it's hit or miss for my people that are starting at 10 o'clock. You're going to have a pretty good day. all the odds are in your favor. And granted, it's still Boston, you're still on the coast, and anything can happen between now and the time the race starts first thing in the morning. But right now, the odds are in your favor, and they look pretty darn good, so let's go with that. If you have on hand, there's a document that I've made. If you're a private client of mine, if you have trained with me for any period of time, if you're in the fitness protection program, which is my old lifetime one-on-one clients, has nothing to do with the new company or the beta test, but if you've been a private client of mine and you are in the fitness protection Google group, you have access to a document, or at least the verbiage in a document called How to Race in a Monsoon. And I talk through all the preparation that I gave my husband for the 2013 Houston Marathon, which, by the way, was a disaster on par with Boston last year. Really bad rain, super strong winds, gale force, nothing fun about it whatsoever. So I tell you that not because I would rather you wake up, show up, you're over-prepared, but not overtrained, but over-prepared, and everything is better than I said it was going to be. I would rather have you be like, Coach MK, when you were so wrong. You made me spend an extra $20 at the thrift store on blankets to stay warm, and then it wasn't even cold. I'd be like, well, congratulations. Guess what would have happened if you had been right, and you hadn't had that blanket, it had been 10 degrees cooler. You know, so people are gonna, it's somehow because I'm the coach and I'm supposed to like predict not just the future, I'm supposed to predict the one pace to rule the ball that you can hold for 26.2 miles. All the things I'm expected to do, which no one really understands, isn't how it works, and it's not how anyone really talks. That's how, that's all marketing. That's not actually how coaches talk to their athletes anywhere. But it's what you want, so people do it. To that effect, it's not about the perfect math that's going to predict the future. It's about knowing what you're going to face and making sure that you are prepared to face it. It's not about predicting a finish time. But we'll come back to that in a minute. The things to remember about this course. If you go through the course preview by clicking the link that I put in the chat, both on the Twitch and here on the Facebook Live, you're going to see a very, not overly comprehensive, not turn by turn, but we're going to talk through the race itself. So if you have the 10 a.m. start, you're going to be in a corral full of people that also qualified to be there. When I say keep your elbows tucked in, I mean exactly that. What you feel in that corral isn't going to be changing for a very long time. For the crowd, for the elite, not the elite corrals, but for the closer you are to the front, the less likely it is that the race is going to break up at all. Okay, you're going to be like elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder with your best new friends for all 26.2 miles. The vast majority of you, or at least for the first 7, and mile 7 is that first fallback point. Here's what I mean by that. The first 3 miles are downhill. Not net downhill, actually legit downhill. You're going to feel good. Those of us watching at home and the commentators all are all like, slow down. That's how fast the first 3 miles of this race tend to be. Yay! Hi, Melissa. Melissa ran last year. Congratulations on surviving last year, Melissa. Looks like they're going to be having slightly better weather than you did. And Melissa can attest to this. If you have run Boston and you want to, and there's something I've left out of the course report or something that you think people need to look at, feel free to speak up, add your commentary. I'll read it out loud and we'll just keep going. But those first 3 miles aren't just net downhill. And net downhill, I mean, if I was selling you something, I would just be like, it's a net win, because that doesn't mean anything. It means you won more than you lost. And that net, it's net downhill means like, you lost more than you gained. It doesn't mean there are no hills. And that is a misnomer, and that is unfortunately how a lot of people look at it. Oh, it's net this. That means there's up and down. Congratulations. So the first 3 miles are pretty much a dead, not like down a cliff, but they are a very nice downhill that does not feel flat. You feel like you're going downhill. Save your energy. That's the time to do it. You can claw back time if you have energy later in the race. You cannot claw back energy because you banked time early on. Banking time is a terrible strategy. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And the less strength work you have done throughout this training cycle, the more conservative you need to be in the start of the race and in the second half of the race as you start to get into the hills of downtown Boston. So if you've been super diligent about the strength work, if you've been training on one of my plans and you've used in the past what I would have called the hilly tweaks, if you have done all the additional hill work that came in the Hilly Races document, if you had done your homework ahead of time and we'd had this conversation and I said, hey, you got to train like this is a hilly race, and you did it, congratulations. You are going to feel the difference come mile 11. Because mile 11 is the point in the race for people that are starting after 10:15 when you will start to feel the fallback that starts around mile 7, because those first 3 miles are net downhill. Your first uphill comes at mile 7, and that is when people start to get tired, when they realize, oh, not only am I going too fast, I went out too fast, I'm starting to get into an energy deficit. You're also starting to realize that the people around you qualified in your corral 18 months ago and have not done enough to maintain since. And that's the other big problem with Boston. It's true that it's tightly corralled, it's tightly packed, there's a lot of excitement. You can coast on that if you're trained enough to ride that wave. Otherwise, you're going to be generating a whole lot of power early on to keep up. You're not going to be able, if you haven't been diligent about the strength, you're not going to be able to keep up with that rate of power generation 2 hours from now, 3 hours from now. Every step you take in the marathon, you're making a bet that your ass is going to have to cash later. Don't make big bets early on. The time for the big bets is later after Cemetery Mile, which is mile 22. But as I break down in that, I'm not going to go through this through the document that's there. I'm going to leave you to read that on your own. Take it or leave it. But those are the most important things to know about Boston. And when I say tuck your elbows in, I'm not saying you have to run like this. You'll be tempted to, though, because it's that tight. Just keep a locked cage, roll those shoulders back, and be cognizant of this. Doing this isn't going to be real helpful. It's not going to make you friends. As a matter of fact, you're going to get it right back. And that's how the broken ribs come into play. And I'd rather not, that didn't happen to my runners. One more note about the charity stuff. A lot of people get really worked up about the presence of charity runners. I have friends that are running as a charity runner. Jennifer Wolf, one of my clients, is a charity runner. If I catch you on social media saying anything negative about charity runners, be ready for my response. It will be thorough. It will be thorough. Don't do it. Okay. That has to be said because I've had to respond already this week. So don't go there. Everyone who is there has earned it. I don't care if they raised money for charity. I don't care if they qualified 3 years ago. I don't care how they got there. Everyone that is there deserves to be there. And if you aren't a member of the BAA, then you don't get to decide who does and doesn't deserve. If you must put it out loud, remember, I got freedom of speech too, and I will use it, too. So I don't like having to speak to you guys in this manner because we're all adults, but don't shit in someone else's Cheerios. It doesn't make yours taste better. So to that effect, when you wake up in the morning, the 2 big things to remember. Check the weather forecast. What you see now might not be valid when you wake up. Remember in 2016 when I ran Philadelphia? We went to bed thinking, oh, it's going to be horrible. And then we woke up and it wasn't horrible, but we hadn't counted on the wind. The wind was the one part that I mentally wasn't prepared for. So when it presented, I was like, wah, wah. So if anything, it's better to be prepared for the worst, go to bed thinking it's going to be terrible, and pack your bag as though the weather's going to be terrible, and then wake up and it's like, oh, it's not so bad. Take all that stuff with you, throw it away if you don't need it. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it has never been more true. Talk to yourself. Pack as though you're packing for a bunch of small children that don't listen. And I mean that lovingly, not to say that you're small children that don't listen, but you don't. It's springtime, it's April in Colorado, and you would not believe how many conversations I've had to have with my kids, like, no, put on a jacket. No, put on a jacket. No, I don't care, put on a jacket. So you're going to have some of that tomorrow. If you wake up and it's 65 degrees, that's kind of warm. But pay attention to what the weather's going to be as you leave the house, not just at the start of the race. So if you're a charity runner and you're starting later because they don't care what you trained for, charity runners are always put in the back whether they like it or not. AWD are always put in the back whether they deserve it or not. So the problem is not like, what's the weather going to be at the start? Calculate for what you're going to need from the time you walk out your hotel room to the start. If you're sitting on a bus, cool. Don't make assumptions. Don't assume the buses are heated to your liking. Don't make assumptions that the person behind you isn't going to open the window to that bus and all of a sudden make it really cool. You know, here in Denver, it can be as cold as 30 in the morning, and then the sun comes out, and all of a sudden it's 70, but it feels like 90. I'm not saying that the weather differential will be that broad as well, but don't, every time you say, oh, that'll be fine, I want you to hear my voice in the back of your head saying, but what if it isn't? Be prepared for that. People are generally really nice, but if it's freezing, pouring rain, and you don't have a blanket, that's on you. So, Boston is a terrific experience. Go out there and have the experience, and don't worry about the weather. After this point, once this broadcast is finished, you've got to shut it off. Any more analysis that you're doing, that's rumination. That's spinning your wheels. You're not improving the choices that you've made. You're not improving your race plan. You are not improving the outcome in any discernible way. You are just wasting energy thinking about an outcome you cannot control. The best you can do is say, what is the worst case scenario? Prepare for that and go to bed. Trust your training. If you've been working with me for any period of time, I promise you know more than you think you do. If you've gone through my Boston course report, you are prepared for the worst parts of the race. What I don't want to have happen is what typically happens in Big Sur. I have clients that like poo-poo me, like, no. I'm totally good. If ever we've been on the phone with me and I've said, well, and you said, nah, chances are pretty good the person you're kidding is you. Because here's the thing about Big Sur, and I point this out because I got a whole bunch of you doing Boston to Big Sur, and that's great. But Big Sur has this one big hill in it from mile 9 to mile 11. And people tend to forget that there's more race after that. There's more hills after that. There is one really bad hill, but that's not all there is to Big Sur. In Big Sur, you're going to run that hill, you're going to be tired, and then come mile 16 through 19 to be exact, you're going to be facing hills with camber. And camber is road tilted like this, and that's really hard on your ankles. And that cambered road is also twisty-turny down the side of the hill. So you run all the way up this hill to have sideways hill like this going down the side of the mountain. People aren't ready for that. Then you hit another series of hills as you head from mile 19, after you cross the bridge, mile 19 through 24, it's little rollers. And those just hurt people's feelings because they're like, I didn't see that coming. I'm like, how did you not see that coming? It was all you did was tell me that about how much you looked at the course map, and then you went, no, and shut the conversation down, and there's nothing I can do. So if any point I've talked about the Boston course, and you've been like, nah, check it. Just check yourself. Check yourself, wreck yourself if you want to, but don't wreck yourself because you wouldn't read the course report, you wouldn't think ahead, or I was saying something that you didn't want to hear. That's the best. Oh, I didn't get it. Yeah. I've been getting a lot of that. I've been getting a lot of... and I don't mind it. I love it. I love my job. You guys are easy to coach and love. But the things that you're worried about aren't the things usually you need to be worried about. You guys are worried about, is it going to rain? Not to go all leap of faith on you and be like, when's it going to stop? It's more like, do I have the right shoes for this? Have I really thought this out? Are my shoes great big sponges that are just going to absorb water? Maybe instead of worrying about whether I need to wipe my feet down with Aquaphor or Vaseline, what I really need to do is check my socks and see if I don't have a thinner pair lying around somewhere. Because if you take a cushioned shoe and put a foot in a cushiony sock and then stick that foot in a cushiony shoe, that's a whole lot of stuff that's going to absorb and hold onto water and make that experience really miserable. I run pretty much exclusively in racing flats because I lived in Houston for a while. And now, every time I went out and it rains a lot in Houston. When it does rain, it's like you expect to see an arc coming out at your subdivision with animals in 2x2 and stuff. Because, that is some holy crazy rain. And to that effect, that's where I really got the swish test came into play. Because there aren't that many races in Houston, and I wasn't about to miss the ones that were happening just because there was a little bit of rain. So we had to minimize the swish and minimize the damage, especially the collateral damage to my feet. Because if your feet are wet and they're in a cushioned sock and a cushioned shoe, they're going to flatten out once they get wet. Your foot's going to start rubbing in the shoe, and that is a recipe for blisters. That is, nothing new on race day is the general rule. So if you haven't run in rain before, if you haven't run with Aquaphor on your feet and stuck into a sock before, 50-50. It's up to you. I'm not going to say that doing it is the right thing, even though you don't think it feels really icky and you can't imagine it. But I can't say that not doing it is the right thing as well. It's something you're going to have to decide for yourself once you walk out the door. And here's what I mean by the squish test. I will, at the end of this stream, I meant to bring my shoes upstairs, but I was in such a hurry to get up here and get started after the disaster that was the bunny photos. I forgot to grab my shoes. But you take around the rim where your foot enters the shoe, around the neck, I like to pinch, and then I pinch around the toe. And I ask myself, and then I stick my finger like into the sole of the shoe, and I ask myself, realistically, how squishy is this shoe and how much is in there? Because every bit of squish is going to be holding water. And to me, the squish test is like the pair, when it comes down to which pair of shoes should I wear, it's going to be the one with the least amount of squish. And my racing flats, my Saucony Type A's, those are my road racing flats of choice, or at least they were until Ons came along. And now I use the Cloud, either the Cloud Racer or the Cloud Flyer is the new model, and I really like the Cloud Flyer. There is so little upper to this that it doesn't really feel like I'm wearing a shoe on top, which is great. And that's what I go for, because that's where the squish is. Because that's a lot when it's building up on the top of your toes, when it's building up underneath your toes, that's also a recipe to lose a toenail. And I'd rather not. So, which is not to say that you will, and now I've given you something new to worry about. It's just something to think about if you're torn between which pair of shoes you're going to wear or that you're thinking of wearing. And the final note is this: remember, when we talk about even effort, that does not mean even pace. You guys are not machines. You're beasts for sure, but you're not a literal robot. So it's not like we turn the dial to 837, that's your pace, and then send you off going. So a lot of the time when it comes down to what's my pace, you're looking at it wrong, because that pace is going to fluctuate. It could go from an 837 to an 832 on a good day, and it could go from an 837 to a 945 because you made some bad choices and ended up having to walk. I prefer to be a little more conservative, avoid the bad choices, and then blow everything I have out of the water. I've clawed back up to like 5 minutes in a marathon in the final miles because I held back, and I knew I needed to hold back. And then by holding back, I could go balls out for a very short period of time, which at that level of fitness was about, 25 minutes. Not exactly. It's not like I was running like sub 6 minute miles, but I was running really, really hard and really, really fast at the end of that marathon. So what you don't need to do is start the race betting that you're going to set a 5K or a 10K PR at the end of this marathon. But if you've done the strength and you have an idea whether or not you've got enough power, and you have an idea whether or not you've ever kicked in the past. And that kick is that surge of energy you have towards the end of the race. In this particular instance, it would be coming through Cemetery Mile. You cross the 23-mile marker. You know that the worst of the race is behind you, and you blow the doors off all the way to the finish. Wait to blow the doors off. Don't do it in the first 3 miles because it's downhill and you're going to grab some time. It doesn't work that way. You're drawing from a savings account that you cannot refill before you get to the finish. So that's everything I have to say about Boston. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'm going to be here for a bit talking. But if you're watching this and you have not run Boston yet, I'm going to tell you a quick story before I go on to ask the coach to sort of highlight some of the points that I talk about a lot, but might not make a lot of sense. I started running when I was 6 years old as part of my dad's cardio rehab following a massive coronary and a quintuple bypass. I fell backwards into marathoning when I went to college because I had no sense of direction. I'd never lived in a big city before. And I didn't really know what to do, and my mother was insistent that I find people to run with for fear that I would be lost or abducted. And being lost was a very legitimate fear. My sense of direction is pretty bad. But in fairness, I come from the country where we have roads, like 1-lane roads in each direction. So like 5 lanes in both directions was like, what is happening? My God. So, and back then we also didn't have like anywhere near as many trails as we have today. When I ran my first marathon, it had to have been 1997. It was a little invitational out in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. And I went with a bunch of the people that I ran with. And when I finished that race and I crossed the finish line, I remember sort of being like, how'd I do? Back then, we didn't really have the internet in the form that we do now. Everybody remembers 1997? We had Metacrawler. We had Lycos. We had Hotbot. We did not have the Google. Yahoo wasn't that good, and you had to do 2 or 3 searches, like a Hotbot, a Lycos, and then a Metacrawler search. And you would get different answers and different hits everywhere because all the algorithms were so different. I had to go to a card catalog in the library to get my first training plan. You had to be in the running world to know about Runner's World. There was this whole, like, information did not flow as freely in the late 90s and early aughts as it does now. And we didn't have Garmin's. I crossed that finish line, and I looked for my teammates and ended up crying the whole way home. When I got back to my dorm room, my roommate asked me, "How did you do?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't care. It was terrible. It was awful. I was crying my eyes out. I was an hour behind everyone else. They waited for me to finish for a whole hour. They didn't speak to me the whole way home, and they're never going to let me ride with them again." She said, "Well, how slow were you?" I said, "I couldn't hold 7-minute miles the whole time. I couldn't do it. I tried really hard. It was like a 3:23. And she was like, "I'm really sorry," because she didn't know what to say. I had just set the context. I suck. Here's proof. Here are the data points. She didn't have a frame of reference, and neither did I. For the next 10 years, I didn't think I was fast. I didn't think I mattered. That group of people made fun of Boston, and they made fun of people who wanted to qualify for Boston. Because they, what I didn't know at the time, were all qualifying and attempting to qualify for the Olympic trials. So if those of you that have been listening for a while, or been training with me for a while, might recognize if they were an hour faster than me and they were running in 2:23, that's the B standard. That's the B standard for men for the Olympic marathon. So that's who I was training with. So was I slow in general? Was I slow relative to that group? For the next decade, I thought I sucked. I didn't matter, because I was slow relative to a bunch of people who never gave me context and perspective. They were like, "You know what? You're kind of slow for us, but for the general population, you're pretty good." No one ever said that. They just compared me to them, and so I compared me to them. And because they made fun of Boston, I didn't race it. And people would ask me, "Oh, are you going to run Boston?" I'd be like, "Oh, you're a runner. Have you run Boston?" "No. God, no. No. I'm a real runner. I don't care about Boston. I'm a real runner," because that's what they said. And I imitated that, and I moved abroad. And when I came back to the United States in 2007, Garmin's were a thing. Everybody wanted to qualify for Boston. Was all they could talk about. Because, see, in 1996, the Boston Marathon changed marathoning as we know it. It was the biggest marathon ever. John Hancock took over the race, and they went to like 14,000 people. It was huge, and they changed the course. So now that was the year it became the point-to-point Hopkinton down to downtown that you see today. Then the whole running world continued to shift after that as the sport increased in popularity. So now, if I had known then what I know now, that someday I would be coaching, and the only question people would ask me was, "How many times have you run Boston?" As me proving how good of a runner I am, I would have to say no. I haven't. And then I have to be like, "And here's why, and here's the history of Boston, and why Boston didn't used to matter and no one cares." It's like the running world before 2007 didn't exist. Most people I meet weren't running before then and don't have that frame of reference. So I tell you that to tell you this. If you're here to ask me, "I'm thinking of training for Boston, is it worth it?" The answer is, I don't know. I haven't run it. But I can promise you, the world has changed so much that no one is ever going to believe that you've never run Boston because you were too cool for it. And that's my life now. I can't promise it's worth it if you do the work. I can't promise it's worth the sacrifice, but I absolutely can promise that it's within your reach. Most humans who want to and are willing to put the time in and really dedicate themselves to it are capable of qualifying for this race. That's what makes it great and in a big way better than the Olympics. It's an iconic race. It's one of the oldest in America. It's the everyman's Olympics, and it's something that is now become a very big deal. And I'm totally happy to help you work towards that standard. But what I'm not going to do is hold your hand and call you every step of the way and be like, "It's worth it, it's worth it, it's worth it." Only you can decide that, as much as only you can decide which pair of shoes you need to wear tomorrow. So, with that aside, good luck if you're racing. Stop the rumination. Think very carefully about what you're going to wear. Anything that's waterproof, that keeps the water out, is going to keep the heat in, and it's going to be really warm. Be strategic, plan accordingly, pull out my How to Race in a Monsoon document and see what my recommended to-dos are. If you can't find them, let me know very quickly because it's pretty late in Boston and y'all need to be going to sleep. For that, let's turn on to Ask the Coach. Yay! Sarah, I'm going to bring you on camera in a little bit. Let me get through the nice list questions first. Please, and sorry, hold on one second. Let me get my glasses. Go. Yep, Metacrawler. Yeah, right. So starting off with the nice list. Crisis of confidence. Hi, MK. I wanted to say by one question for an emergency situation if I needed you, but I really need to hear your reassurance right now. I'm training for my first marathon with Incredible with tweaks. I'm about to start week 15. I'm having a mini crisis of confidence. Panicking I won't be able to make the cutoff time of 6 hours or not even finish at all. My half in October was 2:24, so this should be perfectly doable for me. I'm 2 years into HR training. The last month or so, I'm logging mileage I've never seen before. In March, I ran 140 miles. I'm not injured. This is a miracle. I don't underestimate how fabulous that is, but I'm running the slowest I've run for years. My legs don't seem to have any oomph in them on my long runs. The most I've managed is 17.5 miles in 4 hours. Although, to be fair, 10 of those were on grass and a mud trail. Okay, let's be fair. Mud is going to slow you down. When you're running in spring and effectively in terrain that's like chocolate pudding, that's going to slow you down. That's not about you sucking. And if you really want to make this about you sucking, great, do that. I'm not going to assist you in that because it's stupid. Don't talk down what you're doing. You're doing incredible things. I'd stopped eating meat for ethical reasons, but think that maybe my protein consumption has been too low, so I've started eating it again as well as taking iron and B12 supplements. I hope you're also working with a nutritionist. I am not here to tell you, you better eat meat. I'm also not here to tell you, you better be a vegan. What I'm here to say is, I have an autoimmune disease that requires me to cut out part of a food group. I can't have wheat, rye, barley, or oats. So if you're cutting out more than part of, and if you're vegan, you're cutting off 2.5 food groups, realistically, I really hope you're doing that with the assistance of a trained professional and not Pinterest. And as much as I love Beyonce, I promise you when she went vegan, she was working with a nutritionist too. So let's be like Beyonce. Don't make assumptions about Beyonce based on what she puts on her Facebook page and her Pinterest. This is a big deal and you're seeing why. Food is fuel and it does impact performance, and it does sound like you're not getting enough protein. It's a very common problem with people that try to do this without the assistance of trained professionals. So if you don't want to eat meat for ethical reasons, cool. I'm not saying, again, you have to. I am strongly recommending that you reach out to Tamara Payton, who's been working with me for a really long time, that you reach out to any of the number of nutritionists that I work with and try to set up an appointment. Most of them, all of them, will work quite happily with vegans. Like, we're not here to judge you, we're just here to make sure that you get what you need, and you do need hella protein. And as a vegan, it's going to be harder. Your protein sources are a lot more limited, but it's not impossible to do. It is improbable that you're going to do it correctly on your own, unassisted, forever. I just want to hear my coach's positive words telling me it will be okay. I've got this and to trust the plan. It's been hard not having you to work through my plan with. I will be joining Maintain as soon as I can. In the meantime, I need to feel coached and loved. I miss you so much. I miss you too. And I know you're in England, and I know that you're going to be seeing this later on YouTube, so I want you to hear this. Every choice you've made is the right one. I love you and I respect those ethical decisions, but let's work with a nutritionist. There's still time between now and London. I think you're running London or Manchester. I don't remember. One of those two marathons. Both require some protein intake. Let's get some protein in your body. And let's start getting it on a regular basis. As for being ready, you're so ready. It seems like metabolically, the only thing that's going on is this lack of protein. If you ran 140 miles last week and you're not injured, that's a good thing. If you're not sleeping enough, again, that could be part of the protein, lack of protein, and that's an easy fix. Once we work out the nutrition, I really feel like the rest is going to fall into place. You're doing fine. You're doing better than fine. You're doing incredible things. If you logged 140 miles last month, who cares what pace they're at? Not me, not your body, and not the marathon. The marathon is a race against the distance. It's a race against your fitness level. It's a race against your judgment. It is not a race against other people. It's not a race against, your meal. And it's not really going to come down to whether or not you ran 9-minute miles or 17-minute miles in your last long run. The pace doesn't matter. Race pace miles for the marathon don't matter. I can tell you that all day long, and I know you guys don't believe it because you read it. You got it on Pinterest, so it must be true. And yeah, I'm going to break it down for you like that, not to specifically be condescending, but I want you to hear yourselves when you read something on a publication you didn't pay for, or a blog somewhere, or saw on Pinterest and decide that this is the holy truth that I have to debunk, and if I don't debunk it, then it must be true. That's a bad logic trap. You ran 140 miles last month. You are ready for this. You are doing amazing, incredible things. You are not injured. There is no good reason to think that you're not going to finish this race. Whether or not you're swept is going to come down to how much and how quickly we can dial in your nutrition and get you enough protein. But otherwise, there is simply no problem. You're coached. You're loved. You're winning at life. You're going to go have a really terrific day. Now let's make sure that you're nourished, that you're thriving, and that you get to that start line raring to go and ready to go. And that's the sort of thing, like, I don't like making big dietary changes ever in the middle of a training cycle. I'm not saying you can't make those changes ever, but if we could just wait till and make them at the end of a training cycle, that tends to be helpful. And if we must do them midstream, do them with the assistance of a trained professional. I can't say that enough. And by a trained professional, I mean, like, if you're in the States, a functional nutritionist. They have a graduate degree and clinical experience, and your insurance company will work with them. I don't know the standards in the UK that well. I can't tell you, but I can tell you if you were here, I would be like, go look for a functional nutritionist. Pull the next one out. Sorry. Mary, my right butt cheek hurts. It's not stabbing or shooting, just dull and achy, mostly first thing in the morning and when relaxing before bed. It does not hurt when I run. It's only on the right side, so I'm guessing it's some kind of imbalance. Thoughts, ideas, stretches, more strength. Initially, I would say go see a physical therapist, and I know you guys get really tired of me saying that, but if I can't see you and I can't touch you, then it's really hard for me to know exactly what's going on. What you just described does not sound like a nerve pain, which is good. But that doesn't mean it's not. The stabbing and the shooting and the searing pain, that's either a muscle tearing, a tendon tearing, or a nerve sending a really strong message that you can't afford to ignore. I would see a physical therapist about it. It's worth it, especially since I know you have a race coming up that you really care about, and you don't want to get hurt, and you don't want to stop, and you don't want to take time off. If seeing a physical therapist is absolutely not an option, then let me know what happens when you foam roll. I need a little more information. So if you're doing the 4-point roll where you pull your knee up and you work out both butt cheeks, like left side, right side on your left cheek, left side, right side on your right cheek. I need to know what happens when you perform that move, and that would give me a little more information. But I have a hard time assigning stretches and whatnot until I know a little bit more about what that is, because I don't want to make this worse. Next question from Lori. Good morning. I'm writing to use my one question from my purchase. My race, from my charity purchase. My race is Saturday, April the 20th. I did not do the EAT. What should my race plan be? Some people have shared with me heart rate ranges per mile, but I prefer to hear it from you. I don't need anyone to do the EAT, man. The EAT existed, and I was quite clear about this multiple times, in multiple places. So I don't mind saying it again. I'm just saying, like, whenever people come at me and they're like, well, you said we had to. I'm like, that's what I said. I didn't say that. I didn't say anybody had to. Originally, it was required on the outstanding and the super outstanding plans as a gut check to make sure that your race pace, because those plans had race pace miles in them, that makes sure your race pace wasn't totally delusional, right? If your A pace is a 10, and your B pace is a 9, and your C pace is an 8, and you're telling me that your marathon pace is going to be a 7:45, you are mistaken. And that is why the EAT was assigned in the plans with race pace miles. For everyone else, I said if you want to do them, you can. It does help facilitate a conversation about how the race is going to go. But broadly and generally speaking, what you come up with the EAT guidelines looks a whole lot like my general guidelines, only they have some paces attached to them. And all we really need to say is, like, we can come up with a rule of thumb. So 2 minutes per mile faster than your 140 pace would be, and a very well-trained person, be their 10K pace. You're probably not going to run your 10K pace in a half marathon unless it's in the last mile and you feel really, really strong. Trying to run the whole marathon at your 10K pace is probably not the best idea. So stay below your 10K pace and you're winning. And so the heart rate ranges that would come along with that general plan stand. I don't really change them for anyone unless there's a super strong reason to. Then we can ramp them down, but very rarely up. If you're like, no, I know I can keep my heart rate over 160 for 3 hours, great, go do that. I'm not going to argue with you. What I can't do is tell you that that's going to be okay, because statistically speaking, you're an outlier. And if I haven't been training you one-on-one to become an outlier, we haven't been working with the strength and conditioning coach to give you all the strength required to kind of force outlier level possibilities into your future, then betting on them is a bet I'm not prepared to make. So that's what I would do. Your race plan, I would stick to the general guidelines and just don't be more than 2 minutes per mile faster than your 140 pace before the final bit of the race, and only if you feel really great. Because remember, every step that we take in an endurance event, we're making a bet with our feet that our quads and our booty's going to have to cash 1 hour from now, 2 hours from now, 3 hours from now. Bet conservatively and bet wisely. Number 2, if I'm not too late, I would love to participate in the beta testing for your new program. I'm registered for Chicago in the fall, but I'm thinking about deferring for a year to focus on nailing a half. Between the polar vortex, snow, and ice, my training cycle for next week's race was not at all what it should have been. Okay, I would love to have you join any of our betas. We're going to be rolling out Maintain. We're going to be opening it up to the public in the next week or so. I'm just waiting for some verbiage back from the attorneys, and then we're ready to go. To that effect, hang on a little bit longer. If you want to defer, I'm not going to argue with you, but I would really want to kind of talk it out a little bit more. If you got into Chicago and you want to run it now, I can't think of a good reason why we wouldn't have you ready to cover the distance in October. And I get that the winter has been really hard, but winter's going to keep coming back. So I'm rolling out these series of programs to give you guys a good way to maintain in between training cycles, and also to shorten the training cycles so that there's not so much pressure on them. Not everybody needs a 20-week plan, but if you're training year-round, guess what? You don't need more than 10 weeks to ramp up for a marathon, and that all of a sudden is very appealing. I know 20 weeks sounds like a really long time, but in some of these online group programs that I've been working with, that's a big bet. That's a lot to assume that people have been doing enough work to be ready to start training for these distance events. And as I quickly found out in my first few months, it would have been a bad bet to make. Most people weren't. They hadn't been doing enough to maintain their fitness from their previous race. Most. Not all. Most. And I say that kindly and lovingly. So I designed a bunch of plans that would get people to the start line uninjured, and a whole bunch of plans that would enhance fitness that had already been built. And now I'm just changing the gateway a little bit to sort of push everyone into 1 year-round maintenance program, and you can ramp up when it's time, and you don't have to ramp up for very long. Because that is how people like, Coach Sarah and Lori have been able to run 40 miles a week on average every week for 4 or 5 weeks at a time, and not feel overtrained and not feel burnt out. It's because we're just running a lot, and we're ready. We are ready at the drop of a hat. We are ready to turn around and then sharpen up for a 5K, turn around and sharpen up for a half, turn around and sharpen up for a full. You have options when you have a great big base. And what the Fitness Protection Program wants to do is protect those gains and protect your base more than anything else. So I say all that to emphasize, if you really want to train for a half, cool. And there's no good reason why you should have to, though. So let's leave that possibility open and discuss it more offline if you want. So those are my 2 big questions from the nice list. And Caroline, I think I got your question last week too. If I didn't, let me know. I did not intentionally overlook it. My inbox is kind of a swamp. And between yesterday's 24-hour death race in a blizzard, which took a lot longer than I expected, followed by Boston preparation for tomorrow, and then a whole bunch of my athletes being like, can you please talk to me tonight? And I'm like, but you're not in Boston, so no, I can't. But it's really important. And my family being here and my son's birthday tomorrow, I'm kind of managing as best I can, so I apologize if I haven't gotten back to your email. But here's a note: if you're watching and you emailed to be part of the Rebuild beta, you're in it. If you've reached out to me and been like, I want to join Maintain, the beta's closed, but we're launching to the public in the next week or so, I'm coming for you. If you have emailed me and said expressed interest, I will be contacting you very, very soon. And that's all there is for that. So with no further ado, 5:52, we're going to have to make... Luckily, I don't have a whole lot of questions tonight, which is great because we got some candles to blow out and some cake to eat, y'all. And then I'm probably going to get more calls from Boston, and that's okay. Okay, I'm no longer accepting responses in the private Ask the Coach document. It will be opened up again as soon as this broadcast is over to take questions for next week. Question number 1. What's the... Oh, wait, Sarah. Sorry, Coach Sarah, I'm coming for you. Hey, you.
Hi.
Hi, there she is.
So, can you bring me on screen in the Facebook Live video, or are we going to do like last week?
I'm afraid we're going to have to do like last week because I did not have enough time to practice with everything.
Okay, totally.
Let me see. Alex Lanton is here. Alex Lanton, do you have a baby yet?
Hi, Alex Linton.
Oh, Sarah Seberg. How and where is the easiest place to follow along if you're at work on the West Coast?
I answered that.
You did? Oh, okay.
I told her Twitter, because that's how I love to watch the big marathons.
Yeah, Game of Thrones. Oh, is Game of Thrones on tonight?
Oh, yes, it is!
Oh, my God. So I need to stop talking so everyone can go watch it, right?
No. You are so good. It doesn't start for another hour.
Okay. I'm like the Tits and Dragons show. My husband and I never really got into it. Breaking Bad was one that took forever for us to get in. Everyone was like, you're going to love Breaking Bad. You're going to love... I mean, you got to get through the first 3 episodes. They're terrible and really slow. But once they... Kaboom happens, and you'll know kaboom, it's at the end of episode 3, you won't be able to stop watching. And I remember, I was sitting there like, this is bullshit. This is terrible. And then I remember that kaboom when he throws his stuff down on the desk and is like, yes! And we were like, whoa. And my husband like binge watched it for like the next month. It was insane. I never got to that moment with Game of Thrones. Everyone is like, if you don't love the first episode, you're never going to get into it. And the first episode, I was like, tits and dragons. Tits and dragons. There's more tits. There's another dragon.
Well, my husband and I were talking about this today. I think that if we weren't like literally in charge of this league, where we and our brothers and a bunch of other friends that comes every week, I think if we weren't in charge of that, we probably wouldn't still be watching it. But we're kind of responsible for taking the bets and creating the spreadsheets. So
did you just admit that you're in charge of a fantasy Game of Thrones group?
100%.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not crying, I'm laughing. Oh my God.
One more season, 5 more episodes. We've been doing it for like 3 years. If you ever want to get invested in the show, set up a group and start betting fake money on the outcomes and get your pride really hurt when you suck at it. That's me every year.
I love you so much. That's hilarious. I don't think I knew that about you. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's epic. Was there anything I said about Boston that or what's the weather forecast looking like out there before I get to these questions?
It's getting better by the hour, interestingly. The one thing I would say is it's likely to be very humid.
Okay.
Because it's kind of like drizzly and wet and in the 60s. So I think it could very, like, I don't know, but I would say the thing to prepare for is that it will feel really, really warm.
Yeah.
Especially if you freak out and wear too many layers. In fact, Jennifer Wolf, hi Jennifer, if you're watching, I had a lovely time with Jennifer this morning, and she told me that the BAA actually sent out an email recommending that people wear a waterproof shell. I don't want to contradict the BAA, but that doesn't sound like good advice to me, given that it's supposed to be 60s and very light rain at this point. Also, what my weather app is saying is that most of the rain is going to be in the earlier morning hours, and like MK said, we can't totally trust that until we wake up tomorrow morning. But
I would rather you had those like shells, because they're cheap, and I mean by cheap I mean they're like $20 for the top, $20 for the bottom. It's way too expensive for what it is, but better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, because.
No, I totally agree with that. I think it's worthwhile to expect though that it you're gonna want to take it off. Don't get the expensive one that you can't afford to take off.
Yeah.
Wait. That's gonna.
Speaking of that, you know what's funny? Did you see that article I posted on the Coach MK page several weeks ago about last year's Boston Marathon? So this is from a professional agent, a sports agent blog. I talked about it. So last year, a lot of people were not expecting the weather to be that bad. They thought it was going to turn.
Yeah.
And so they did not. And elites showed up, and they didn't have the right jacket with their sponsor name on it, so they couldn't run in a jacket. Right, so that was why so many dropped out. I had no idea that was the case. But so imagine this: if you're like just running around the city, and you're a Nike athlete, and but you prefer your Saucony run jacket, and you run around the city in that, or you can't get the official kit you have to wear that shows the logo, and you can't get your hands on one before the race starts. So that's why a lot of people dropped out. A lot of the elites and couldn't finish. It had nothing to do with their body fat. It had nothing to do with how cold they were. Well, I mean, it did have to do with how cold they were, but the reason that it wasn't like they were stupid and just dressed too lightly. They didn't have the sponsor. They would have cost them money. They would have owed their sponsors money. They would have been breaking their contract if they had run in anything else, and they would have been breaking their contract if they'd been healthy and not started the race. So they had to go do whatever they could do, freeze, and then be pulled for hypothermia. Can you imagine? Anything you do tomorrow, you're better off than the elite. Thank God we're not elite. I'm never going to stop saying that, man. Thank God we're not elite. I can wear whatever the F I want. Yay for freedom.
Yay. Yeah, the one last thing I'll say is that the weather is actually looking not terrible enough that I'm probably going to bring my 3-year-olds to yell at some people on Heartbreak Hill. And if you're starting one of the later girls, we probably have to go back for a nap before I see you. But I'm going to do my best.
Yes, Trisha, we're both wearing purple, by the way. Trisha just asked. We did not coordinate that.
No, and you can't see that I spilled my dinner on mine. I like where it's cutting off right here.
Oh my God, can you guys see that I had a couple margaritas after those freaking bunny photos? Oh my God. That just hurt my brain and my feelings. Oh my God. All right. Anyway, let's get to these questions and get you over to Game of Thrones so you can get your fantasy league together. My God.
I'm still going to lose. It's fine.
I don't even know what a fantasy league would do for Game of Thrones. Now I need to go watch Game of Thrones and get past the tits and dragons just so I can figure out what it is you do in a fantasy league.
I can sum it up very quickly. There's there's this guy called the Odds Maker, and he creates odds every week, like 2-1, 3-1, 4-1 on who's going to die. Like characters die all the time. That's one of the things that Game of Thrones is famous for. Tits and dragons killing people. So
tits do kill people.
We all have a certain amount of fake. We all have a certain amount of fake money to bet with based on the odds that the odds maker makes. We all put in our bets, and then whoever gets the most right, gets more money, and then we redo it the next week. And the same person has won the last 2 seasons in a row, and we need to beat her this year.
Oh my gosh! Hi, Amy. And you are not wearing purple. Well, let's fix that. Text. Let's go put on some purple. Yeah, put on some purple and say and send good vibes Sarah's way so she can finally win her fantasy Dungeons and Dragons League. Oh my God. It's so amazing.
All right, I will take all the knocks I get. Totally.
Oh my God. I love it. I'm going to be laughing about that for a long time. I'm sorry. I'm not going to let go of that for ever. Last night, my husband and I went to a game night for his work for the local office, and they're totally nice people, but they're all really young, and they had this stupid game where we're all in 3 teams, and the game master has like the name of a show written down behind his hand, and then each team comes up and they bid.
They're totally nice people.
They're so young. They're so young. Oh my god. So he's like, all right. So if you haven't heard of this show, you have to sit back down. But then if you have heard of this show, you need to make a bet on how many words it would take for you to communicate what this show is in a way that your team would guess it. And all right. So I was like, you wouldn't believe how many times kids sat back down, and I'm like, it was like Laverne and Shirley. They're like, yeah, I've never seen it. MASH, never seen it. Whatever. But the one that got me, this girl was like, oh, I can do this. I got this. And she stands up and she yells, questionable wife. Hashtag feminist buzzkill. You can imagine. I was like, what? Alex was like, he's touching my leg. And I'm like, I'm calm. I'm calm. And then the guesses started. House of Cards. No, Scandal. She was awful. Actually, this one had a really bad wife. She was terrible. And they start naming, and I'm like, FYI, I am the ghost of Christmas future. I was so mad. I'm like, this is what you have to look forward to. No matter what you do, you're playing into an evil woman narrative. And now every time I enter a room, I told my husband as I walked out, he was like, do you want me to get you an Uber? And I'm like, I'm sober. Yes, I'm going home. Oh my God. And I'm like, from now on, when I enter a Deloitte event, I want it to be like, questionable wife. We're going to lean into this shit. So from now on, when I enter a room, if you see me, just yell questionable wife, and I'll be like, here. Which sounds kind of like Game of Thrones. Hopefully the narrative is driven by something other than questionable women killing a kingdom.
I'll put a place card next time you come to dinner.
Oh my God, questionable wife here. All right. Anyway, burning questions, because we got to get you to your game night. You questionable wife. See who lives.
Very questionable.
Which questionable wife is gonna make it through the end of Tits and Dragons tonight, y'all? Woo! Jon Snow, choose wisely. What's the deal with weekly mileage? Why do so many of the articles I read about successful runners cite their weekly mile numbers? Because they're coachless and unloved amateurs is my guess. Remember, most people talking about running have just been doing it for a long time. But doing it doesn't mean doing it well. It just means my first run happened when I was 6 years old. That means I've been running for 34 years. Not, I've been running a lot and correctly lately. There's a wide berth in there. So people talk about mileage for the same reason they talk about pace. They don't have any other framework through which they can view or judge or gauge their running. And since they don't really understand what they do or why, they have no way to judge it against everyone else. They're the ones that are just like, questionable mileage. They don't actually have an idea what a good mileage number would be. They just know what the most mileage they've ever done was, what that felt like. And I mean, Sarah, think of it this way, right? When you said last week that the last time you ran 40 miles, it was the peak week and a marathon training cycle, and you were hungry, tired, and miserable, and that was like, 4 years ago, and then we compare that now to last month where you averaged 40 miles a week for 4 weeks and didn't notice it, to Morgan Biddenson, who, if you're watching, hi Morgan, I was really proud of her yesterday when she said to me, at that stupid, horrible, and yeah, I love you guys, but that was a horrible effing race down a 0.83 mile loop around Palmer Pond. Where are you guys coming up with these tiny ass loops we got to run around? I'm going to find something smaller than a track and loop it for 2 days and not sleep and drink espresso. Where's Beth Pretty? She can glamp next to me. I'm just like, I'm going to blame Beth Pretty for all of this facilitation. Like if she offers to show up with a espresso machine, will you keep running? We're going to have you come volunteer at our PTA, Beth Pretty. Oh my God, so you can keep people moving. But generally, but what Morgan said to me yesterday was like, I've hit over 40 miles 2 weeks in a row, and that has never happened before, and I've run more marathons than I probably should have. So I feel like the secret to it is not focusing on the mileage, but focusing on the consistency, the regularity, dialing back the intensity so you can increase the regularity and getting in all that time on your feet, which tying this back to Karen earlier with her ask the coach question, it's why I'm not worried about you. If you got in 140 miles last month, you're ready for this marathon. If I ran more miles, would I get faster? Not necessarily. To finish that question, running more miles does not mean you're going to get faster, especially if running more miles means we're upping the intensity, or it could actually increase the chances of you getting hurt. I know this point. More does not always mean faster, and more does not always necessarily mean better outcomes. More with the assistance of a coach and the assistance of a plan and a group. More good choices leads to more better outcomes, not more mileage for the sake of more mileage. I know this plan is intended to maintain fitness, hence the name, but is it a good idea between race prep periods to low-key increase fitness? Yes, through strength. And we'll be rolling out those programs too very soon, just not initially. Then when I was ready to prep for a specific race, the tiger would already be in the cat. That is a very good way to look at it, and that's what we're going to be doing. The thing is, most people don't train enough in between training cycles and then are trying to do distance, intensity, and strength all at once, and that is too much, and that is going to lead to burnout and injury. I know you say strength, but I have some doubts. Straighten me out here, coach. I mean, it really is, it's strength. And yes, you need more than what I tell you guys to do, but I can't get you guys to do more than what I tell you to do. So what I assign you is not for marathon faster prowess. It's for the very bare minimum that would make Alex Lanton feel comfortable, Alex Lanton being my physical therapist, would make him feel comfortable that you're not going to get injured out there. There is strength for better, and then there's strength for not injured, which is good. So let's start with the strength for not injured once we're in that training cycle, because there's only so much we can ask your body to do at once. More strength for the sake of more strength makes almost as much sense as more miles for the sake of more miles. So talk to me a little bit more about what you want to do. If getting faster is what you want to do, then let's talk about that. But if you're going to kind of throw things at me, well, this make me faster and this won't prove me right or wrong, that's a really, really tough framework for me to work with. But yeah, we have to do strength that is specific and is timed in accordance with your target event, because if we're getting stronger and increasing mileage and adding speed type stuff all at once, what we're gonna do is short out your central nervous system, and then nothing's going to respond. And that's effectively what was happening to me for a fairly long time when I was trying really hard to recover from my year in bed and was doing all the things as I got out of it, when I should have been doing less of all the things, but all I really wanted to be was better, faster. Anything to add, Sarah?
Just to go back to the question about weekly miles, because
this is all one question.
Yeah. So to go back to the beginning of the question, I'm so glad you asked, because people should ask. And I think we so easily hear some coach who we just think is, really reputable throw out a number, and then we go, oh yeah, that number, that's what I should want. And it's hard to even trace the origin of that thought and that conviction sometimes. And I remember the first time I ran 40 miles in a week. It was when I was training for my first marathon, and I was using a Hal Higdon marathon training plan. And I remember there was just something, he used the phrase 40 miles a week in that book in such a way that it was okay, I ran 40 miles this week. That must mean that I'm doing it right and I'm ready, and I assigned a lot of meaning to that. In the future, whenever I built up to 40 miles a week, it was really meaningful to me. But no offense to Hal Higdon, but he's one coach, and he doesn't know me personally. He just wrote a book that a lot of people have.
Yep.
I copied it to a lot of
I have
people.
it. Yep.
It had nothing to do with me specifically. And I think that what's been particularly good about my running in the last year especially is that I just really stopped caring about how many miles a week or how many miles a month. And so I always think it's interesting how every January there are all these new clubs that pop up in Strava that are run this many miles in the next year, and people are jumping into them because they're yeah, that sounds good, I'm going to set this goal, that whether it's 500 miles or 1,000 miles or whatever it is that you want to hit in the coming year, you give that number all that meaning. And I've never heard I've never had an association with yearly mileage the way I have an association with weekly mileage relevant number. Yep. Because that 40 miles a week number got ingrained in me early because of how they did. So those groups don't really have an appeal to me because I'm like, well, I don't know the yearly number that would like impress me. So what I did last year was I just didn't pay any attention. Then all of a sudden in November, I realized I ran a lot more miles this year than last year, and that feels really cool. And it just sort of happened because I wasn't looking at a big number. I was putting my eyes on like what I'm doing right now. And once I got to a point where I was able to look back at a long period of time and see the growth there, that was really cool. And I don't think I would have gotten there if I had been like on a week-to-week basis. Okay, I need this number of miles this week so that I can get to 2018 miles this year, because that really matters.
Yay!
And I don't want to talk down to that at all, because I get how those numbers that people say and throw out there can get really, really big in your head and hold a amount of significance to you.
And it's hard to get rid of them. Kind of like a little girl showing up in D.C. and thinking she didn't matter at all. Like she couldn't call herself a runner until she broke 3 hours in the marathon. And I thought that for a decade. I thought if I didn't break 3 hours in the marathon, I didn't deserve to run the marathon. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, sorry, you just went totally deaf, and I'm like, she's mad I interrupted her. Oh, it was a bad connection. But it's funny how a lot of these arbitrary numbers do get stuck in your head. And relative to that group, I mean, imagine how hard that is. I bang out a 2:23 without sharpening up. I just show up and run really hard. That's one that person is probably going to be horrified. Like, why would I run a marathon if I didn't think I could be faster than 3 hours? That is half an hour slower than what I do now. All of those numbers are arbitrary and totally relative. So one person's 40 is someone else's 20 is someone else's 180.
Exactly.
So, and to follow it, because I can see here, I think I'm talking to Trisha. You want to get faster? Cool, let's talk offline. I think you'd be a really good candidate for a strength program. Like, if you want to beta test this strength program that we're going to be rolling out, it's an add-on product to maintain that was not intended to be used in a marathon cycle. Then I would love to get you started on it. It'll be ready next week. Not to sell, but and not to like throw everyone in the beta, but it will be ready as in up in Training Peaks at some point next week. Send me, now you can hear the margaritas. Send me an email to info@coachedandloved.com. And we'll talk about getting you in the beta, because this really, what we need to think about when it comes to getting faster, doing all the stuff that you're doing, is literally increasing the power output every time your foot hits the ground. And that's going to come from a very specific type of strength that you have not seen in a lot of my plans, because my plans are more protecting against injury than they are about the specificity required to get faster. But be ready. You're going to feel like a baby giraffe. I started on my training plan on Thursday, and I can barely climb stairs. So, and it's going to feel that way for a couple more weeks. So if you're interested, I'd be totally happy to help you out, but this is what we have to do to increase power output. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to call it yet, but I think I want to call it the outlet. Just go plug it in. Fire it up. You want to do that? All right, great. Let's do that. Do email me though, please, so I can't forget. Because if it's not, I know I don't respond to all my email, but I would definitely respond to that email, and we'll get you cooking with Crisco as soon as we get it up, and we explain it all to Coach Sarah. Okay. So moving on to the next one. What are the pros and cons to regularly switching the long run to Friday and the stride sandwich to Saturdays during a maintenance phase? Same question, but during a training phase. All right. So the reason you can do whatever you want in the maintenance phase. The pros and cons to switching is do it when you can in the maintenance phase, because I want you to feel a sense of control. Your family's going on a road trip on Sunday. Great. Do the long run on Saturday and be like, yay, I can. That's freedom. Do it and take advantage of it, which is not to say you can't in a training plan. But the thing that's going to be harder about having a shorter training plan is that there's, again, less flexibility. But it's less flexibility for a much shorter period of time. So to that effect, not to say that your life is not in your control on a training plan, but you have to sort of, as much as I hate this word, submit to the training plan a little bit. And the more submissive you have to be, the more aggressive your goal is. I don't need anyone to have an aggressive goal. What I need everyone to do is not lose balance and perspective on our way to achieving goals. It is possible to be goal-oriented. It is possible to be driven. It is possible to be ambitious and not sacrifice your sanity, your family, your motherhood, your job, and all the friends that you've got in the process. So I say while you can, switch it around. Great. Is there a benefit to it? I have it done this way because I have found the reason I've had this habit for 35 years is that everybody knows what I'm doing on Saturday mornings. And there for a really long time when I had, like, before I had kids and I had all kinds of friends and I was always busy, people knew, like, if we do this on Friday night, MK's not going to come. So we do it on Saturday night. And so it wasn't just training me, it was training my life and training my friends, and making sure that everything worked in a way that was very predictable, very consistent, and I didn't miss out on things. Because the one day I decided to do my long run on Sunday, and I'm missing an event that's held on a Saturday specifically because they knew, well, you always run on Saturday mornings. F you. We did this for you. You know, so the more of a pattern you can be in, the less of a shock it is, the fewer exogenous shocks you have over time. But, I mean, during a training cycle, again, that's kind of the good thing. We can always swap the Friday, Saturday runs, and that's not a big deal. Unless you're on a big plan with a lot of race pace miles and you think you've got to get those race pace and those tempo miles in because to offset the strength you're not doing, and we're doing fractions and formulas there, that's when it all gets kind of dicey. So I say if there's nothing to gain from swapping, there's nothing to gain from swapping things around except sanity, and nothing to lose except sanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how would you put it, Sarah?
What I've recently discovered is that I really like having Saturday mornings off, and I had never tried that until pretty recently, but I just kind of decided to try it because, like, I did a Friday long run one time, kind of out of the blue. It had more to do with the fact that I was running with my friend Lisa, and there was a lot going on. I wanted to talk to her for as long as possible. So I texted my husband, I was like, hey, I'm not going to be home till 7:30. Are you cool with that? And he was like, yep. So we made it an impromptu Friday long run, and I was like, oh, this is actually really nice. And something about having a 3-year-old and having a pretty busy 9-to-5 job during the week that I can actually take the weekend off with, which I never had before this past year. I realized that having Saturday morning to not be out running, to, like, get up, chill, sit in a big comfy chair with my daughter and read books and, like, not have anywhere to be, that actually has a positive impact on the entire weekend. For the phase of life that we're in right now,
yep.
It really me. So I rearranged everything about my running schedule so that I could do long runs on Friday and have rest days on Saturday and then run on Sunday. I really, I don't know that I'll be able to keep doing that when I start training for a marathon. Long runs are going to have to be a certain amount of long, and there's only so early I can get up on Friday morning, run for 4 hours, and then go to work. Like, I don't know, we'll see.
It'll get better in the fall.
Yeah. I guess my point is that it's like most people don't do that. Most people would not want to have to get up super early on a weekday for a long run.
Yeah.
But in my very specific situation, I've found that this system works really well for me because of what it gets me on Saturday. And that, like MK was saying, it creates this nice predictable pattern that I think everyone in my family really likes. And then I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything when I get up on Sunday morning and I'm like, all right, bye. And I leave for an hour.
Yeah.
Go for a run. It's a different sort of arrangement from what we used to have, and for now it's really good. So I think it makes a lot of sense to really assess what works for you and why, and sort of what you really need to get out of your weekend mornings, both in the family context and in the running context.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to try something and see if it works a little bit better than what you've been doing, if there's something about what you've been doing getting under your skin.
Because and this is my final note on this, because I'm getting the wicked messages, like, well, not wicked, sorry, it's like, we want to blow up, RJ wants to blow up birthday candles, get down here. I'm like, oh my god, okay. So the final thing I'll say on that is most of the run clubs that I know, the casual run clubs, do their long runs on Saturday. Most of the elite track clubs do their long runs on Sundays, and that's intentional, so they're not running into people on Saturdays, or they're coaching people on Saturdays. So if your run club happens to run on Sunday, or you want to run with the run club, if there is and I'm not saying there are illegitimate reasons, like illegitimate children, but if there's a reason that you want to run, that you want to swap things around, by all means go for it. It's not like this is bad. But if it's like, well, there's a run club on Sundays and it's not elite and I want to run with them because they set out water and I just don't want to run alone and, rattlesnakes and someone's got to call the cops or whatever. Cool. I don't really care. I'm not here to judge it. I'm here to facilitate. So that just means if you're doing the high level, some of the higher intensity stuff, we can't do the higher intensity stuff on a Monday and we'll have to shift the whole schedule the day forward. But that's not a big deal. There are definitely ways to accommodate. It's not like, thou shalt. The only thou shan't is you really shouldn't do the long run the day before a tempo run or a hard effort run. That's it. So with that in mind, hello MK, I'm loving being part of the beta testers. Whoop whoop, we love having you. I would like to run the Niagara Falls half beginning of June. Prior to beta testing between January through March, I've been running easy effort 3 to 4 times a week, plus strength and cycling 1 to 2 times a week. Is it enough time to prepare for the half marathon in June? I think it's fine. My biggest question is, when you say you've been doing stuff, how much time has it been per week and what do you need to get out of this half marathon? So yeah, I think you'll be ready to cover the distance, but the question is, are you going to be able to cover the distance in a way that's going to be satisfactory to you? And that's only something only you can answer. Remember, I was ready to cover the distance for the New York City Marathon back last November, but then when I realized how much time it was going to take, I'm like, I don't like doing anything continuously for over 5 hours, and it was going to take me 5.5 hours if nothing went wrong to run New York in November. And I was like, but if things go wrong, it'll take much longer. That doesn't sound fun to me. I can't do it. I tell you, anyone that knows they're going to be out there for 5.5 hours or longer, you are tenacious AF, and that's exactly what I'm naming your marathon plan. Yay! I'm real excited about that. I can't wait to show you guys. It's super cool. But to that degree, don't talk it down. Tenacity is a really big factor, and I've only got about maybe 4.5 hours of it in me to do one thing continuously. So if covering the distance is fine, and let's say your PR is 2 hours and 10 minutes, right? And we say yeah, I can get you ready, but you've had an injury or whatever, and the best you could possibly hope for is a 2:40. Only you can answer if that is going to be okay for you. I'm not here to judge the time. That's not what I do. My job is to get you ready to do the distance and tell you if you need to add a time component to it, to tell you if we have enough time to get you ready to do that distance in that time without getting re-injured. So to answer your question, is it a time to prepare? Yes, depending on what you need to get. So answer yourself, what do I need to get out of this experience? And then I'll come back and tell you if we have enough time.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yay.
Well,
and just be able to be really honest with yourself about what do you need to get. You don't have to answer right this second. Give yourself some time to think about it.
Yeah.
It can be hard to reckon with the fact that I'm actually not okay with running a 2:40. That would make me feel really sad.
Yeah. And which is not to say 2:40 is a sad time. Remember, it's all relative, right? Those buttheads had me going home crying when I was 19. When I was 18 years old. I wasn't even 19. I was 18 years old, back to my dorm at Georgetown, thinking at 3:23 I was a loser and I was worthless because all I could think of was they waited for me for an hour. A decade. That one event defined who I was as a runner. I made them wait for an hour. I suck. I'm a 3:23. I'm a loser. Right? So you can think of yourself that way at any pace. So
and it may have been one offhand comment from a person who doesn't matter a long ass time ago that made you think that some time was worthless or dumb or sad. Those they come from the weirdest, most unexpected corners, and sometimes they rattle around in your brain for years.
Shoot, reclaiming my fucks.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And Sarah, to your point, I'm not making yourself a t-shirt saying I'm not slow, I'm tenacious. You're going to be able to buy t-shirts that say Fitness Protection Program Tenacious AF.
Yeah.
Yay! And I'm super excited about that too. So yeah, you can make the shirt or you can wait and buy it from us. They're going to be good. So I want to be really clear, and I know Sarah says it all more eloquently and way less profanely than I do. It's not about the time. Only you can decide what sort of a time is that you're going to be happy with. If you say 2:40 is too slow and I can't handle it, I'm not going to shame you. Do you know how many people would be happy with that time? Because it is what it is. It stops and starts. So I'm going to meet you wherever you're at, and we'll move forward together like that. It's not going to be about well, you should, because it's shaming to live in the should, and we're not ever going to get there. I want you to think about what you need to get, and I will tell you if we have enough time to get it at that race on that day. Perfect. And right now I think what she needs to get to is her Game of Thrones fantasy league. Go take some bids.
We got the spreadsheet all queued up, baby. It's going to be epic.
I'm just saying, I think it makes sense that if you're going to watch a show about tits and dragons, that you're going to participate in like the whole pagan, unchristian thing of like lottery and betting and gambling about it, Sarah. So you just go down that sin hole on a Sunday night and Lent.
Not to mention spreadsheets. Did I mention
that we need that on a t-shirt. Diving into the sin hole on a Sunday night. Oh my God. On that note, you are coached, you are loved, you are winning at life. Yay. I love coaching and loving you. Thank you for playing. Go watch Game of Thrones. Go bet. Get in the sin hole. Be tenacious AF while you're in it. Yay!
Boston Brothers.
Yay, good luck tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
It's my off button. There it is. In stream. In live video.
That was fun.
Yay! I think so. Oh, that didn't end.